silica pneumatic actuators. So it's kind of like you can think of it as a balloon that you can manufacture to deform in a specific way when you fill it with air. So just started, and I'm hoping to incorporate elements of OpenWorm into my projects later on. So that's why I'm starting participation now.
Great. And yeah, so I sat down and sort of explained cybernetic to him, and seeing if there's a way that you could implement that model in physical space, which would be great. Uh, here. Okay, great. And the other thing that he's helping us with, sorry, I'm getting folks asking me for the link. The other thing that he's helping us with is journal clubs, which is where we will begin in terms of the agenda for today, which I'm pasting and sharing now. So I am very grateful that Ben has jumped in and been willing to help us with organizing a lot of journal clubs. And the first one is actually set to begin on November 13th. And I think we're just doing the final bits on this, but we had some journal clubs that we hadn't done in a while. And this one is one that we had saved up for a while. So I think most of you have seen this, and most of you I think have already signed up. I just want to plug it one more time because it'll be here, looks like next week. So it's about the topic of brain emulation, which I think we get asked a lot about, and I'm just happy to defer it to other folks who have actually done work in this space. So we'll be having a presentation that actually backs into published peer-reviewed journal articles on this topic. So it is actually backed by scientific methods and approaches, which I'm really happy about. And so I think it should be a good discussion. We're settling the panel, I think, this week. So just another plug, if you haven't volunteered for the panel yet and you want to be part of it, let Ben know. And but yeah, and so this will be followed next month with Journal Club with Eduardo Izquierdo, who has been building on Netta Cohen's model and making simplified neuronal models of worm posture and kind of doing a little proto version of, I think, some of the bigger vision that we have. But putting papers out and getting them peer reviewed and published, which is really great. I met Eduardo at SFN this last few weeks ago, and he's a really great guy. And so hoping that that journal club will be a good way to start coordinating. So anyway, so thanks to Ben for doing the heavy lifting on sending these emails around and getting that stuff going and moving forward. So, oh yeah, probably got to change this. Okay. Great. So thanks. I see more folks have joined. There's Porig. Okay, great. So we got the link. Awesome. Here's the agenda link for Porig. Okay. So just wanted to quickly at the top, so we try to do these conversations at the front before having updates from folks, and so I sort of sent this a note out to kind of talk about this. So last time we had this discussion about coordinating people amongst folks, and thinking a little bit about ways to share methods for organizing folks. And today I want to talk a little bit about integrating code across our various efforts. And so a while back, Matteo and I put a few iterations into this diagram here, which begins to show the connections between the various repositories and efforts that have gone on in the project so far. And these arrows are kind of great, and it sort of puts a sort of theoretical idea of how a flow is supposed to work between these different pieces and parts. But one of the challenges I think that we run into in the project is that there's no single person responsible for animating this flow, I guess, other than me. But my bandwidth for actually plugging these things together has tended to be more limited. So we've sort of been thinking creatively over the last few weeks about how to actually move that forward. And at the same time, there's been a couple new developments in the world of some open source technologies that I think may be now converging with this. So one thing to work out, how in theory all these repos talk to each other, but another to actually set it up and start working. So you may or may not have heard of a new open source technology called Docker. So really quickly, Docker is sort of the latest evolution of virtual machine technology, where you not only have code that's shared, not only do you have an instance of that code deployed on like a file system, not only do you have an image of a machine with a full operating system and everything configured in that, but you even have now what I think Docker adds is a more fully fleshed out environment for sharing images with other people, versioning those images in a GitHub-style way, and providing environments for all the major operating systems that's open source and free to use to run those instances that are pulled off of the repository. So it is, as far as I've heard, it's sort of the talk of the town in the Bay Area these days, and it has been really integrating into a lot of different open source efforts and technologies lately, such that I think it's standing to kind of move past even Amazon machine instances in terms of the go-to way to kind of package stuff up. And maybe even that's a controversial statement for folks, but that's kind of where I was last checked in on stuff, is that AMIs were a good way to, like, I don't know, share instances. So as normally happens, there's been a stream of new volunteers coming to the project over the last few weeks, and one of them, who goes by Jamie Morey on GitHub, volunteered to actually look into this Docker thing, and he was actually, in a short amount of time, able to start pulling together a test of working with Docker and taking some of the OpenWorm repos that we have on that integration diagram and starting to put them together onto one instance. So let me just kind of explain what you're looking at here. This is Docker Hub, which is, you can think of it analogous to GitHub, except instead of pulling code down that's implemented in Git, once you have the Docker environment, what you do is you pull the full instance. And the idea is to make it so simple that I guess you could just run this command. So you just do docker pull, and then it's Jamie Morey, which is his repo, and then you pull this test. And what comes down from that is an entire image that is the way that the last person who uploaded this sets it up. So this is what's on it. So right now, this test instance has Ubuntu, has Git, has Vim, has Python, has pip, and he's loaded PyOpenWorm into it. He's loaded movement validation into it, and he's loaded a version of Cybernetic, which he's actually built. So he's actually built Cybernetic, which by itself immediately is interesting, because a lot of folks run into problems building Cybernetic for various reasons of drivers. And if this is working as I expect it is working, as soon as you pull this in and you go into the instance on whatever platform you're on natively, you've got a running instance of Cybernetic that just works. I think there are some caveats in that with regards to using GPUs, but he's got it at least building and putting out some output, and he was on chat earlier confirming that his output is in fact what you have to do. So he's got some, I guess, instructions on a few things here. I think maybe things that he has, some ways of how you actually get it to run on your own local system. Looks like maybe you have to make again. But anyway, okay. So this is just an experiment for what one dedicated contributor was able to do in a couple weeks, and thank you to him. I actually invited him to join. He wasn't able to make it this time. Maybe he'll come next time. But it occurs to me, and I'm just going to throw this out for discussion, kind of pause here, but it occurs to me that if we wanted to, this might be a solution to the problem that there's sort of no real owner for closing this loop. So the proposal would be, is it possible that what we do is we build Docker instances that load up all these various tools that we have here, which right now there's just a fraction. But then we start to actually build the scripts that plug them together, that animate these lines, so that we could do the following steps: do a Docker pull, start up the instance, and then have one script that does all of this. One Python script which could generate a new C302 out of the latest PyOpenWorm, would run C302 with some sort of parameters, would take the activations out of C302 that come from the motor neurons and plug them into Cybernetic, would run Cybernetic, would extract the skeleton from Cybernetic, would plug that skeleton into movement validation, would run the calculated features in Cybernetic, or in movement validation, sorry, and compare them to the known features, and to basically calculate a worm similarity index. And we know already that Cybernetic takes a long time, and we know C302 is actually relatively fast. But like, I don't know, let's say this takes 40 hours to run, I don't care. But that there would be one way in which this could happen. And it wouldn't just be one person that could do this. And in fact, everybody could do this just by grabbing a hold of this Docker instance and running one script and seeing this work on their machine. And it wouldn't matter if they were on a Windows box or a Mac or Linux, and it wouldn't take them 50 hours to build all these things variously and make sure that their environments work variously. But everybody in the world could just download this one Docker instance and run all this stuff. So that is the proposal. And obviously, somewhere in here would be great, as it is the hub of this stuff, that in fact Geppetto was animating all this stuff, and you could see it as well. But I'm even less concerned about that than I am about just making sure that this entire loop runs somehow. So whether it goes through Geppetto or it doesn't, I'm agnostic. But I'm more sort of asking for discussion on how we get to a point where everybody can run the full loop that connects all this together. So let me pause there and see if there's any comments from various folks that have ownership over these various pieces of parts.
Well, I think it's a great idea. Because it solves the tools and the infrastructure problem, which is like, dude. So. And it's kind of orthogonal to Geppetto, because Geppetto could be in, in the Docker, and you could run it. It could still orchestrate the other tools, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like a good idea, yeah.
Okay, Porg, yeah, I know that you've expressed interest in getting these things plugged together, and I don't think this in any way supersedes. I mean, obviously, you still need the piecewise scripts that do plug from one into the other, and all that obviously still gets stored on GitHub. I don't want to in any way pull stuff out of GitHub, but the idea would be that this instance is the runtime environment for all of OpenWorm. And so that stuff would go there.
Certainly there's a long way to go with C302 to tune it to get correct behavior, but certainly you can take the best current parameters, which makes the worm even just bend slightly, and connect up the sequence of events that need to feed it into cybernetic and movement validation and so on. So yeah, it's certainly something to be done.
Okay, great. Michael, thoughts? Michael and Jim, actually, on the movement validation side, would you guys be all right with this stuff being loaded up and having the pipeline sort of as a piece expressed in this Docker instance that you guys would also be working with?
Yeah, it definitely seems like it lowers the barrier to having to configure everything and get it all set up, as you were saying. So that's huge. Also, having the versioning aspect is really cool. I'd heard of Docker, but I didn't know much about it, so that's cool to have that run down there. And yeah, of course, definitely on board. So I guess this would be something we'd set up, and then people could just tinker away at it. Various people could be working at it at the same time, I suppose, because we're all working from the same sort of versioned Docker instance, I suppose. So that's also compelling in that only like I would only need to maybe work on the scripting part for the part that is important for me or that I know the most about, I guess. And then the cybernetic stuff could be configured by somebody else. So again, that lowers the barrier to entry because I don't need to know everything else about setting up the rest to be able to add my piece.
Definitely. And Sergey here was just asking in the chat, and I think it's worth just saying out loud. He's asking if it only works under Linux, and no. So it works under Mac and Windows. So I've installed the Docker environment on my Mac, and then what it does is it'll pull in, like this particular instance you're seeing here was Ubuntu, but that becomes a virtual machine. So I'm running Ubuntu in my Mac, basically, as its own separate instance. And then I believe it also works under Windows. So there was another contributor who was playing with this stuff under Windows. So the idea is that what Docker does is make sure that any Docker instance can run on any of these other systems. So, but I think we all need to experiment across our other platforms. So I mean, what I would suggest is that that as we get going here, that we do the experiment to try pulling Jamie's test instance down, install Docker for yourselves, see if you can get into it across whatever environments you're in to make sure this is actually viable for our technologies. But basically, all of us can do that. I would also credit Andrew Davison of the sort of neural ensemble world with being the first in this space, because he actually packaged up Neuron in a Docker instance, and I was playing with that like a couple months back, and found that it in fact was working pretty well. So I kind of was inspired by him to move it forward. But yeah, it's supposed to run on all platforms, and I can verify that it works on that. Okay, Andre, Sergey, what do you guys think about this? Is this something that you guys would be willing to try as well to get a Docker instance there? I mean, you can. So Jamie, I believe, has built Cybernetic, and I just haven't played with it myself. But might be interesting for you to pull that instance as well and see if that piece of it works as you understand it.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's really great. I'll be happy to try it, to work with it. New experience for me.
All right. Cool. So Matteo, so the piece I haven't put in here is doing a full like Geppetto install. Although I open it up to you. The reason is because it is the absolute most complex thing to install. And so as this guy was looking for things to install, I decided not to throw him at the entire install for Geppetto. Also because it does seem like I don't know. I want to understand from you. So this opens up the integration topic a bit more broadly, which is to look back at this diagram and to say, okay, so let's now imagine that we're all happy to play with this. Okay, we're all happy to have this pull down, and we're also happy to make sure that all of the different code bases that we are managing in a distributed way all works on one instance, right? So then, Porg is happy to make sure that C302 is running on this Docker instance, and then Jim and Michael are happy to make sure that the latest movement validation is able to run on this instance. And to some extent, we can all be putting a confluence of these working instances together, and now we have the opportunity to really focus on the connective tissue. So strategically for me, it seems like the way to do the connective tissue in Geppetto is to write Java code and build Geppetto modules, which I think is doable, but is a higher barrier of entry to, say, compared to the Python, which is probably the less good option, but is also a lower barrier of entry kind of thing, where I think it's more possible for folks to kind of plug and hack things together. So to open this up a bit more and not take this off Matteo, I mean, since the project began, we have always had these competing interests, which we balance and I think are good, of making a single code base that does everything, which has been Geppetto, and it's been very successful, and it's what gave us WormSim, and it's great. versus having everybody be able to work on their own separate, piece in whatever language they want in order to do research and development. And in no way do I want to close down either avenue of those. I think they both need to progress. But given that integration, I think, has been something that has been challenging for us to figure out, challenging for me to figure out how to best make it happen, I think it's just worth revisiting those two approaches and figuring out, if we had this Docker instance, what would be our best strategy for animating this diagram. And I'm just going to throw the diagram up again for us to kind of look at. And I want to start with Matteo just because, I think you've had the strongest vision for integrating these pieces, and obviously because you drew this diagram. And so I'm curious your feedback of this strategy, or a proposal for a different strategy, or just your thoughts.
Okay. So there's many things to consider here. So on the, I might be missing something. So and I actually missed the first few minutes. So tell me in case there's something I should hear. But I know about, I know Docker, and I understand, like, as a solution that would be something that will help automating basically a confluence of different tools and code bases, and automate how they're talking to each other, so that instead of having to have to sit down and type in the console for 1 hour and a half installing everything and making sure that everything is installed, you just run that one line where a pre-configured image with everything is brought up and ready to use. So that solves, so Docker to me solves the issue of how do we automate, how do we make something that would take a long time, make it so that it takes not such a long time, and that doesn't require as much expertise. Okay, am I right into that? Is that what Docker is bringing?
That's one component, and it's certainly true. Just want to make sure that I emphasize what I think the key advantage is, which you didn't mention. So it has the effect of saving time, but how? Basically, it allows everybody to work off the same file system and the same virtual image of basically one box that has everything loaded and installed and built into it. So all of the various repos are already checked out from Git and are built and are basically ready to execute as soon as this instance comes down and you log into it. It's like ready to execute. So that's the key. That's the key piece of it, and that has the effect of speeding things up for sure. But that part where everything is already configured is the part.
Okay, so just to restate it in a broader way, so gives the advantage of easily creating a workspace for people to be able to then do the work that needs to be done. Okay, as in Docker doesn't solve any integration issue. Docker just makes it easier to work with different code bases and making sure everything is working off the same version and things like that.
So we can all check out the latest built version of all the technologies in one go without having to rebuild them and configure them. And in theory, we could write a run openworm.py Python file and stub out the commands on the different things, and it would just work, right? So,
but I think the key thing is that you don't have to use this necessarily. You don't have to change your environment. If you have all of these packages successfully installed, that's great. You can continue working in your own environment as you will. The good thing is both that it provides new users a very quick way to get everything installed on an instance, and it also hopefully provides some kind of a check that the versions you've pointed to are compatible and nicely fit together, so that if there are 3 different people with 3 different environments out there, that's fine, but there is one scenario in which all of these different packages can easily fit together. So it's useful as a test, but also as a help for new users, but you certainly don't have to change your current environment. if this is in place.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that. So all of this to say though that it facilitates things, it makes the environment easier to set up, but it's not solving our integration challenge. As in, you put back that diagram, lines that do not exist will still not exist. Things that do not work, things that nobody's working on, will not work. So you can run, it might take you 2 days, 3 days, but it's like, what is the goal? Are things actually getting hooked up? No, because the lines are still missing. So there will still be involvement from people to basically working with in different areas and in different lines. And I think I hear some background. No. Everybody's muted. Oh no, Mike. Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, Mike. I was like, who's that? I could see all mute icons. So, Stephen, could you bring up that picture again? Okay, so I think Geppetto is on a different level because Geppetto has the goal of actually being a comprehensive solution. Not that does everything, because Geppetto still be using Neuron, Geppetto still be using Cybernetics, so it's not Geppetto replacing any of those, but doing the connection at a level that is more on the engineering side rather than on okay, we need to figure out how to model this, let's try, and that can happen in any environment. So the two things are still valid, and figuring out the science from one perspective will still be a prerequisite for Geppetto to be able to standardize and produce and be a solution for OpenWorm to make that capable to happen in a production user-friendly environment, like for instance the WormSim. So if you see that box with a question mark there, the red one above Geppetto, so that is, for instance, one thing that Mike Vela was working on a long time ago. I know that Poreg at some point spent some time on it, but nobody's working on that. Like if we want to start like Docker or things like that for me, but I think at a more abstract level, for me, those are like nice to have, yes, whatever. But it's like we need somebody that works on that box. Okay, we need somebody, okay, that takes the output of a simulation that is executed with that comes from C302, okay, tries to plug that as input signals to Cybernetic, do it in Python, do it in Ruby, do it however you want to do it, just try and do it, so that we get to a place that we have at least that closed loop working, but not working because it will be, it won't be doing anything sensible, but so to the point that we can start thinking about parameters, we can start thinking about how to adjust these two different models so that we actually end up with a worm that wiggles, that swings, being driven by the nervous system. To me, if you were to ask me what is the key thing that we have to work on right now, is to add something in that box so that we can work on this. So that
there is a prototype of that in my branch in Cybernetic, which takes the output of C302 and feeds it in. So at the moment, so in most of the cybernetic examples, it's a sine wave being generated traveling down the worm that Mike Vela had implemented. So at the moment now it can take the output of a C302 simulation with .dat files and feed that into Cybernetic, as opposed to using those sine waves. But again, it's not optimized. It basically, if you get the worm wiggling slightly, then it's yeah, the best you're going to get. So, but I mean, that basic interaction is there, but needs to be made a little bit more accessible within Cybernetic.
Okay, can you throw a link to that one out?
Sorry?
Can you throw a link to that one out?
Sure, yep.
Can I get it? I'll just throw it in the notes. But yes, I completely concur, Matteo, that that box needs to be filled in, and so good that we have a prototype for it. And I think that so that's great. Is there another thing you want to focus on or add to?
The same applies to every other connection that we is basically missing, and that everything that is red, for instance, things like because it's like automating is fine, but it's like I think we are at the point in a lot of these things that it's not a problem of we cannot do them quickly or in an automated nightly build way type of thing. No, it's like you cannot even do them manually, because it's like in some cases there are prototypes, in some cases there are not even prototypes. So yeah, that's what I would focus on.
This is about the motivation of all of us to do that. So you're correct in a technical sense, but the reason that I'm bringing this topic up is because I believe that we've all been suffering from a barrier of entry. Like, I've been suffering from a barrier of entry. Like, I don't think I've ever built movement validation myself and played with it, okay? Partially because I know that it's constantly changing. And so this box down here, which is the one that goes into movement validation, like, I just don't have as much like familiarity with because I haven't built it. So if instead I could do 2 lines and I could get, what Michael and Jim, could assure me was, the absolute latest version, and it was running and it would do exactly what I would expect, or even better, if I could run one script and I could just see a comment which says coming soon or something, then I think that would give me leverage and motivation personally to care more about this box. And so what I'm talking about here is, you're right, not technically necessary, but I think from a community perspective could be very helpful if all of us now get a bit more desire to work on these boxes, because I think we all feel like these boxes are somebody else's work. I think that is in general, collectively, our challenge right now, and it's natural. And we've done all sorts of great work in the parts that are in the boxes. But I think the idea is, how do we get leverage on ourselves to care about filling in these question marks? So these question marks have been there for years now, literally years. So so you'd say, it's a challenge of the box and a challenge of doing the code. Yeah, sure. But it's obviously a challenge also of like us caring to do it. So I think I would care more if I could very easily see all the libraries put together, and I'm hoping that you guys will too.
Just to pitch in here, so as you say, for a real newbie, having a Docker that's all decked out with everything would be really optimal, because you just download the Docker and bam, run it. Alternatively, considering that we kind of work on different pieces, I mean, we've got cybernetic and we got this and that, 302 over here. You can also build like a Docker for each piece, like have a cybernetic Docker, and have the Dockers, basically the blocks on this diagram would be individual Dockers that would talk to each other in some way. And I think that's actually part of the Docker deal. I might be mistaken, is that you can come with, I think they're called appliances or something like that. But I might be thinking of another alternative called Rocket, which is related to Docker. And then also, if there's pieces missing, okay, they'd be, instead of having a script that says, nope, sorry, it's not here, it would be sort of a stub Docker. And so it would have an API, and you'd call it, and it would just return something, vanilla or whatever. So that may be, it would be a bit more cumbersome for new users, but maybe more suitable for people, I mean, as an organization here, working in sort of, individual different areas.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that we could evolve to. I'm just presently thinking about, I guess, the Docker MVP, which is like, how do we get us to do anything where we can have all these environments, easily checked out. By the way, this also comes from personal experience of every new volunteer that comes in has the challenge of getting some of this stuff built, and some of it is easier than others. Some folks can't contribute to some things because they have a hard time building on some particular environment, like the Windows environment for Python, for example, can be more challenging than the Ubuntu experience for Python. But yeah, I think I think that the beauty of this of Docker Hub 2 is that everybody can kind of like take the latest instance and fork it. So somebody could take one monolith OpenWorm Docker and turn it into 2 or 4 or 10. And flesh out those things like you're saying.
Yeah, the other advantage or the other scenario is that, okay, yes, there are maybe 4 or 5 different components on one Docker, and they're not necessarily initially all completely well integrated. I mean, for example, there's no interaction yet between C302 and PyOpenWorm. There will be eventually, but I mean, if a Docker is set up that has PyOpenWorm and C302 and Cybernetic, even though they're not yet directly connected, then at least the first step is done. You have all of those, and maybe somebody can do something manually to connect them. But certainly, if you can't get them sitting side by side on one instance, maybe even including Geppetto, then there's a problem with the installation scripts for each of these individual ones. And over time, as, for example, C302 integrates with PyOpenWorm, Cybernetic integrates with C302, then these can be updated in the latest version on the Docker, and then what person gets in 6 months' time will be a lot more integrated than it is at present. But I mean, the first step is just giving somebody one large instance, and they have everything. They can play with everything. They can go to see what movement validation does, and eventually, if they keep updating that, they'll get a nicely integrated environment.
Cool. So I think both are valuable. I think both are valuable, and we can collectively, work on these things ourselves. So okay, do we want to talk about this other box? Actually, kind of going back to this discussion on Matteo. So this box, I think, yeah. So this is the one that goes from C302 to the muscle activations. This box is one that we've also spent some time working on, which is the one that goes from basically, I guess, cybernetic skeletons to into movement validation. Well, maybe that isn't. What is this box actually? Hang on.
Okay, so
videos of simulated worms. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think there were. Can you scroll down a little bit? I think there were a couple of alternative. Okay, so basically, skeleton extraction is giving us basically a skinned mesh of the worm. That is basically what we're using, for instance, in WormSim. So when you see the wiggling in WormSim, that is obtained by that, basically by that blue box there with the skeleton extraction that is post-processing the output of Cybernetic. So the idea for this box was to go from there to produce a video that would be comparable to the same videos that movement validation is already taking as input, so that movement validation could start working with either videos, so to extract features from either video so that we have a comparison of actually something that is coming from a simulation and something that is coming from the real worm. We know that at the beginning it's like these two videos would be like quite different, okay, and maybe there would have to be some time just to identifying what is the best candidate video of a real worm to compare, for instance, with what the simulation is actually doing at the beginning. But we know it's the beginning of that pipeline that then would produce that output that we see on the left-hand side with the extracted features from either videos, and the other one below, which is the delta feature, so differences in the features extracted from videos of the real worm and videos of the simulated worm. But that box would be the one producing a video from a simulated worm that could be. Since it's not like we have 8,000 simulations of the worm, it's like that thing might even be one person, okay, that goes to WormSim, records, makes the worm as big as it is in the real videos, it records the wiggling for, I don't know, 5 seconds, whatever, and then does a bit of filtering on that video to make it look like it's the same, graphically it uses the same color as the one that comes from the real worm, for instance. And that could be what that box is, like one guy that does that and produces this video. And at the beginning, and you know, the more when we will have 100 different simulations and we need videos from all of that, yeah, maybe we want to automate it or do something a bit clever than that. But just to begin, just to have something to fit to movement validation, that's what I would do. One guy that spends 3 hours doing that.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that, Stephen, if you go back to the question mark, everything Matteo's saying, totally correct. I'll just point out that there's basically two red arrows that go from skin mesh animation to movement validation. There's the one that just goes directly down, and then there's the other that goes through this mystery box. And Matteo's described the mystery box. The direct arrow would be if it's just transmitting, or if we just pass the skeleton position information directly to the feature processing algorithm, rather than go through the process of actually like creating an AVI file or a video file that's then parsed by our computer vision algorithm. So there's two possible ways to communicate from OpenWorm to movement validation, and it's not clear which one is perhaps the best one. Perhaps the direct one is better, and that's what we've been focusing on our end. But yeah, creating that video is also an option.
Hey. Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Cool. Yeah,
okay.
Both things would be. I don't know what is best, Michael. The only thing I think through the other box would potentially be if I understand what is there in place today. Yeah? So there's this assumption. But if I understand what is there in place, I think it might be quicker, because again, I think it's like 3 hours to produce such a video, and you already accept videos as input. In the other case, we would have to, figure out what do you do with the input? Is the output that comes from the skin mesh exactly what you need, and things like that. So that I don't know in an absolute sense what is best. I think one might be faster if I understand what is in place at the moment.
Well, a couple of wrinkles to that might push it in favor of the other approach. Number one, we have the computer vision algorithm actually sitting in a different repository, and to be honest, I haven't built that computer vision algorithm. That's something that the Brown Lab has built. So there's actually some integration issues between movement validation and the computer vision algorithm that need to be worked out. So that kind of puts some space between us and that algorithm. And the other pieces that we've, I say we, but it's Andre Brown and Rex Kerr, another worm tracker principal investigator. They've both put together now a specification. This specification we've been talking about for a long time, but now this is a specification of skeleton position information and other metadata that they think will be acceptable to the wider community. So the fact that we have this potentially out there means that we'd be able to hand you over a specification that you can potentially satisfy when generating the skeleton. But if you're saying it's the 3-hour job to get the video, maybe that is the easier approach. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I mean, whichever one you want to provide, we can do the next step. We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, Michael, I think I got the gist of it. I don't know if there is somebody inside you.
We hear another voice, but it's only
we hear someone else.
Are you on the...
Oh, is there like some crazy?
Yourself.
Well, as far as I know, it's only me, but
What
maybe my mic is
you?
picking everyone up. Well, I am in an open office, so
All right.
Extra information. There you go. Enjoy.
All right. So to close this part off, guys. If we want to try to use Docker, I get that there's like whether it's nice to have or not. I don't know. I think it's mixed, but I would suggest that you can try right now downloading Docker and then following the link that I posted and trying Jamie Morey's instance and seeing just first bones, like how to get into a Docker instance, and see what you think about that as a general means of doing stuff. And then separately from that, I think what this will do for me is inspire me to write like a run openworm.py, which is probably the most like wishful thinking script I will ever write, but where I will employ essentially sketching out like a set of executions that follow those steps that are there for scripts that do not exist and arrows that do not exist yet. But what I hope is that between those two, and focusing on these question mark boxes and focusing on these red arrows, that we will have an evolving instance as well as code base that will show us just once it's executed, it will just tell us, okay, this step is not working, this step is not working, this step is not working, or this is fake data that we're plugging in here, right? But I think we've lacked that for too long, and I'm eager to see it going. So it's more for me a pledge for you, but you will be able to see the results of it coming out in Docker instances, and you are also free to modify and change and make your own Docker instances and do it better than I will do it. But that is what I wanted to get everybody on the same page on here, and why I asked you guys to make sure that you could come out for this, because I think it's potentially strategically for the project input.
Yeah, just to clarify my position, and I'm sure I probably came across in a different way. It's like, I think it would be useful, okay, for especially thinking about folks that come from the outside and that would not know what these different pieces are, how to get them set up, and to get them in the space of actually doing something. So from that regard, yes, I think it would be very useful. What I was saying is like, it was more coming from my point of view. It's like, my problem is not that I don't know how to build cybernetic or this or that. It's like, I have no bandwidth to work on those things. So right. and that was more the perspective that I was looking at. But yeah.
No, I got it. No, that's perfectly good. Yeah, no. And as as a contributor comes in today, if we ask some new person to help work on that box, like they just do suffer from the problem of building like the 3 libraries that are required to even work on that box. And so like literally this has happened already this month, where somebody could have in theory helped us with that, but then just got stuck on various things. So thank you for that. And I also appreciate that, it does not magically with one magic wand we install Docker and suddenly this entire pipeline is present. But hopefully it's a way to iterate. Okay, and so yeah. So thanks to the comments as well. Bradley, also, I realize that DevaWorm is not on this flow yet, because although as much as I would like to plug in first step, grow the worm, second step, run the worm, we're not quite there yet. But hopefully this is maybe at least just a useful conversation, just strategically thinking about how to keep a bunch of different code bases that you guys may be working on as a way to share them as a unit.
Yeah, so, we could. Like, we could incorporate things like databases or like different types of, like I said before at the last meeting, we have analyses where, you might generate a bunch of graphs or like tables or some set of data that you have, and then some set of data that you've produced from the analysis. And so to have it in a place where you can see where it flows from is good.
Great. Okay, excellent. All right. Last thing, I just wanted to point out too, we plugged it on social media, but there's this paper that came out in the Journal of Cell from a worm lab where they looked at the nervous system of the worm. They got 150 neurons all simultaneously recorded in a worm, and then they knew the identities of them, and they extracted out some phase plot diagrams from them. I'm so excited about this that one of the next journal clubs that we're going to do, probably not till the beginning of next year, in January or February, but I'm really excited. The authors of that paper have agreed to join us on a journal club and explain why it's so significant. I don't have time to talk about it now, but from a neuroscience nerd out point, I would just say, if you want to invest some time in reading only one paper this quarter about C. elegans and and where it's going in terms of research, I would suggest reading that paper. It is really awesome, and it's important not just for us, because it provides us a target for what our nervous system should be doing at a high level, but I think it's also really fascinating from a perspective of just like neuroscience and all this stuff. So we'll hear more about that, but look forward to that journal club as we schedule it. Again, probably more for February, but I think it's a big development in the last month. So good stuff. Okay, so now I'll be quiet, and let's see who's ready to update. I think Giovanni wasn't able to join us today, so I guess we'll skip the WormSim update for the moment. But I do know that he's rolling it out to more backers very soon as well. So it's already open to like 40 backers, and I think there'll be more coming soon this week. So let's go then to Geppetto.
Okay, I was actually ready to show a bit of the latest of the WormSim since Joe is not here. But very briefly, okay. So if you this is where some new things have been added. So you will see here that there is this box, neuron name, okay, that basically says both the scientific name of the neuron, but also the remember we had the whole Adopt a Neuron campaign as part of the Kickstarter, so that shows what was the designated name for the particular neuron from whoever backed it. So as you click on different neurons, so for instance, I just picked one that doesn't have anybody. It says this is an orphan neuron, want to adopt it, drop us an email. But basically, you can, and like for instance, this one, whoever backed it decided to be simulations.com. So that's the name that appears there. Fair enough. And yeah, so this was one of the things that were not there last time. Yeah, and the other one, I think the glitch in the data that was there was also fixed. We worked on this with Sergey and Joe, so this is now a nice without gaps sinusoid, without discontinuities, not gaps. So yes, just brief update as to where WormSim is at and what is going out to more backers through Joe. So I did help beta on both of these things, but Joe was the one investing more time. So yeah, so just to give a bit of an update on the WormSim in Geppetto land, we are starting some refactoring to cut it short to improve performance when working with networks. So by introducing an abstraction that is based on types and instances, and basically it will decrease a big deal the sort of load that both the server and the client will have to make in order to support large networks. So this is basically this is something that few of us are working on, plus some other improvements on different areas for different infrastructures. One thing, although it's not OpenWorm related, but just to speak also to other places that are now starting to use Geppetto, we have virtualflybrain.org. That is basically a way to basically explore through an ontology the anatomy and the data available for the Drosophila. And we are basically, Geppetto is starting to be used there also to provide the 3D visualizations, and we did also some work with that group in order to add some features I don't want to steal OpenWorm time by by showing that, although there are some nice pictures. And yeah, that's what we are doing. That's what we are doing at the moment.
Cool. Very good, very good. All right. Looks like DevoWorm is next on the list.
Okay, so we've been doing mostly. There we go. So we've been engaged mostly in manuscript writing. Tom has been doing writing up Morphozoic, and I've been doing some analyses and writing up a couple of manuscripts. We're writing for one paper for a special issue of a journal, and that's with Richard Gordon. He had the invitation to write for a special issue, and we're starting that process. It's due in March, so we're just kind of putting together the manuscript and going through it. And then Tom is working on the Morphozoic write-up, which is going to be like a proof of concept paper. We kind of discussed maybe having it as a book chapter, but if that doesn't happen, and then we can put it somewhere else. But we're at the point now where we're writing up manuscripts, at least one round of manuscripts, and then there's some other things going on, but they haven't really matured very much lately, like the contact with the Elegant Worm group at UCLA. They've been working on something. We were talking to them about acquiring microscopy images of a C. elegans embryo, and we're kind of still in the development stages of that, so we haven't, pardon the pun. So we'll see where that goes, and they're still working on it right now. So that's where we're at.
I wonder if maybe I should drop by LA.
Yeah.
So just sort of see how they're doing.
Yeah. I mean they're a pretty busy group, but if they can get the data, like we said, maybe we can try to acquire some data from early development. So they have these really nice acquisitions of an embryo of any biological tissue, but in this case, they can acquire an embryo, a very early developmental stage of the embryo, and they have really great resolution. I mean, the cells come out, and the whole reason we're doing this, of course, is to get more information about the cells. We have in our data sets now information about the nuclei and where they are, but we don't really know anything about the membranes or other things going on. We can only sort of interpolate where the membranes are, interpolate where the cells are. We have their size and their nucleus, but that's not really a lot of information to go on. So you can do a lot more with high-resolution images, and so that's where that's that's where that would go ultimately.
All right, very good. Tom, do you want to put your update in under this as well?
Sure. Yeah. The Morphozoic that Bradley mentioned is pretty much the draft is done. So just to give you a brief flavor of it, let's see. I'm trying to find my. I'm trying to share this thing here. Oh, there it is. Okay. So so what it is basically we're trying to reverse engineer some morphogenesis phenomena, and just to give you a flavor of it. And it uses a cellular automata. So, like for example, one part of the paper is this Turing's reaction diffusion morphogenesis, which is his paper in 1952. And this is kind of what it does. One thing that it does is it produces from a random set of cell values this cheetah pattern here. So this uses a couple of paired set of differential equations to do this. And so the morphozoic is sort of a learning reverse engineering type technique. And if it watches this thing happen, which is a couple of steps to get from the left to the right side, if morphozoic watches it, so to speak, and you could train an artificial neural network to produce a sort of it sort of learns how to do that. Yeah, so it has a technique of using sort of gradients of nested neighborhoods. So basically, that's kind of, I'll send out the draft of the paper, obviously, to the group when it's finished.
So, and then just briefly, can you remind folks the connection to the development side? So you're exploring some computational principles of development through this cellular automata, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the idea. It's like nature's has this morphogenesis, and this specifically uses morphogenetic fields, as they're called. And so there's a lot of computational gold to be mined there. So the model just kind of tries to find is a model of that. So and so we're just trying to abstract things to come up with a model that can actually do a number of different. It doesn't do this only. It does a couple of other things. It does neuron or axon pathfinding. It can simulate a Turing machine. And there's probably a lot of other things we could do, but I just put the 4 things in the paper. So,
cool. Well,
yep.
look forward to reading it.
So,
all right, very good. Yep. So let's keep going. So movement analysis. Michael?
Yes, a reminder, movement analysis is our more general term for what we're doing. Okay. We don't just focus on the fact that we're validating the OpenWorm simulation, but that we're also potentially building code that can be used to analyze worm movement in other contexts. So we had a meeting last month, and of course we have another meeting coming up on the 20th. The major work this month has been from, as I mentioned, Andre Brown and Rex Kerr, who have completed now a specification for worm tracking information. So this includes the metadata as well as the skeleton position over time, and it's designed to be an open specification so people can add additional metadata or other information, annotations that they'd like, but that the core specification can be adopted by tools like movement validation to interpret and so we're confident that the minimum information is there, and then any additional information could be used by other tools built by other people. So that's really neat that we have that. We even have a parser that Rex Kerr built in Julia, and I'm working to translate that into Python now. So other things, the computer vision algorithm, I can't remember if I've said this before, but Kezi Lee at Andre Brown's lab, he's finished that algorithm now. So now they're optimizing it a little bit, but it's done. Eventually we'll need to work on, as I was saying before, to pull that closer to our work with movement validation. But it's done, so that's really neat. And there's a few other people working on various things, but that's sort of the major things. And Jim, in the last month, has also finished the feature calculation refactoring, and I just need to make that work with statistics. And Jim, I think you had some other comments that you wanted to make as well.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. One of the other things we've been doing is trying to make it so that it's these features are less tied into what has been done before, and perhaps expandable to different types of worm movements or different environments, different test setups, if you will. And that actually brings me into one of my strong concerns that I still have. That I have some time to start working on this now, very little bit, but I do have time. But one of my main concerns is how we are planning on tying in these simulations to the code that we have written. And in particular, what I'm getting at is all of the the video data that we've collected is worms on plates crawling around. Our simulation is water-based, so I don't know if we just make it really thin water, if that's like a first approach that'll work going forward. If we need to think about trying to get data of worms swimming, which, as I was alluding to earlier, we would potentially be able to handle that now with our setup, although we need to come up with features in that case. But I'd like to see this move forward, and I think that the tricky part is just not knowing, on my end at least, how to best do that. So welcome comments or thoughts or whatnot. That's pretty much it on my end.
Yeah, so you're asking about simulations that deal with something that's more like an auger gel in order to be able to have the data compare to that, right? So, Andre, do you think you can show some of your latest progress on this when we do your update? This auger gel environment?
Do you mean very viscous liquid?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I will try.
Can you show? Okay. So that's so let's give him a minute to pull that up. Maybe we can sneak another update in. But yes, Jim. Point is, this is an appropriate concern, and this is a good moment to show that you're not the only one who has it, and there has been some progress made on it that I've gotten to see because I've been writing this paper with these guys, and I get to talk to them on a more regular basis. But
yeah, one thing, Jim, should we try to do both things that you said? As in, I think it would be useful what obviously Andre is doing, trying to get to a simulation on Agar, but also if we could have some videos, especially if you guys are now in a position to process them, of the worm swimming, because truth is the worm can do both, and we kind of want to validate both. So if we can have real data for both, and we can have a simulation for both, I think it would be nice. And maybe these two things can go in parallel, since I would imagine different people would be involved.
Yeah, I'd be really excited to see that. I think perhaps the way to move forward on that is, I don't know, Stephen, if you know labs that have collected this data that we could potentially get access to, and start working with that. And swimming is obviously the one thing the obvious thing to go to, but then there's also like chemo-sensitive tests where people spray the worm and see how they react in mating. I mean, you go wherever, and I'm slowly trying to work to the point where we could do these various things relatively flexibly and try whatever. But I'd love it if we could get other people's data and start incorporating that in as well.
Well, this might be another connection point for this Elegant Minds group that Bradley was talking about before. So we've engaged them on the developmental side, but their bread and butter has been they're a UCLA undergraduate group where they have their undergraduates run worms on plates and do whatever kind of experiment. And this one sounds even easier than doing the developmental stuff. So possibly, if you want to engage, that's a connection point where we can say, hey, can you throw us some movies of worms that have been swimming? I think it might be not too hard to engage them on that. So that would be the first go-to. And then beyond that, I would say if Andre Brown has ever done anything like that. But yeah. So those are two things. Is it a thing where you think you could do a back and forth on email with that group, Jim? Possibly, just to
yeah, for sure. We can email back and forth between us and get that contact info worked out, and okay. I'm more than willing to push that forward.
Okay.
So.
Okay, awesome. So I'll close the loop on that here later this week. Great. It looks like Andre has something to show.
Yes. Okay. A few words about this. Initially, all particles in the simulation had the same value of viscosity. In the recent version, which I will show now, liquid has the same. No. Liquid inside the worm has the same viscosity, and the liquid outside has very large viscosity as the maximal value I can define, because if I will make it, for example, 5% more, simulation will become unstable, and right now I don't know the reason why it happens. Well, but the value is maybe 10 times or even more larger than we previously had. So it's some kind of middle situation between liquid and I don't know, gel or agar. So it's not completely elastic matter. It's very viscous liquid. Okay.
And see if you can zoom in so that folks can see horizontally that it's sitting in this liquid.
So this thing.
Yeah, and can you get a little closer?
Yes, sure.
So it's doing the thing that Augur does, with sort of carving a path. Can you show them at the tail how it looks?
Tail is here.
Yeah. So there, you can sort of see there that it's like left a little bit of a channel in the where it's been, which is kind of what happens with Augur as well. That's much slower to fill in because it's much more viscous. Remember the early movies, it's just sweeping the water aside and it's all kind of sloshing around. But here, it's much more like as soon as the tail leaves, it's just sort of slightly sealing up behind it, but then there's still kind of a gap behind it. So that's starting to approximate the viscosity of the Augur a bit more closely.
It doesn't seem. Sorry, go ahead.
You don't see it?
No. I was just going to say I do see the trail. Just having watched a bunch of those Schaefer Lab videos, it does seem like the trail is closing up more than in those videos. Like in those videos, it seems like the gel is pretty much immovable, not completely, but it's carving this path, but it just sort of the capacitor sort of sits there once it's been carved. So, but it's cool that the worm is moving forward, which is, as you say, it was just sort of sweeping away at the material before. So that's good.
So, Andre, I think
we have quite realistic values for wave length, for forward velocity, but I can't call it true crawling. It still has much has much in common with swimming yet. I have in plans to try in other environments, maybe some kind of elastic matter. So this task is still in progress.
Oh, there you do see the trail nicely there, right?
Ah, yes.
Oh, that's nice. It would be neat to see this like sped up to the worm speed, because then it would, I don't know, be easier to see how biologically realistic this movement is. Right now it's like very, very, very slow. So you almost like see the gears grinding in the simulation rather than like, how it would look if it was
already very fast in comparison with actual calculation speed. But yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, sure. I can make it more comfortable in near future.
Cool.
So that's it.
Very good. Andre, do you want to update on the paper, or maybe Sergey, while you're at it?
Well, about the first paper which we sent to PLOS Computational Biology, the status of the paper finally switched to under review. So the editor decided that it's not too bad to send it to reviewers, and that's a good sign. And now we are still working on the second paper, which will tell about the construction of the worm body and about its capabilities, about, in particular, crawling, swimming, and so on. So now we are trying to do our best to make these modes of locomotion work realistically. That's it.
Cool. Sergey, do you want to add anything? Take that as a no. Maybe I'll go back. Okay, sounds good. So, Org? Oh.
Just left the moment you.
Yeah!
He knew you were going to call on him.
Oh, there's Sergey. Sergey, did you want to add anything?
I'm working. I'm still working on cybernetic stuff, Geppetto stuff, and paper stuff, and nothing new. Actually, all my updates you can find maybe in issues. No, there are no results actually for now, but I'm working on it.
Okay. No worries. So let's go to Porg, who's just popped back in. Updates from you, sir?
Not too much to update OpenWorm specific. The one thing I mentioned last time was about analog synapses, which has been implemented in LEMS and NeuronL now, which does look like it's going to be quite crucial that synapses can continuously transmit between neurons. So that's been implemented in JNeuroL as a simulator. There are some examples in C302 using it. I'm just starting to try to convert it to Neuron, and if it works in Neuron, then it'll be much easier to incorporate these into larger networks, run it in Neuron, optimize the network. So that's something I'm hoping to spend some time on over the next week or two. But apart from that, not too much specifically OpenWorm. Plenty of things happening in NeuronL and so on that will benefit slightly in various ways, the C302, etc. But not too much else to update on, apart from being at SFN and meeting a few people there. But yeah, Stephen mentioned about that. That's all from me.
Did all you SFN people end up meeting up at some point? That'd be cool. Like, I think Stephen was there. I think Jim was there. You were there, or was it all ships passing in the night? Didn't get a chance to meet up.
I certainly met with Stephen.
Cool. I think Stephen is sleeping.
Yes, we certainly met. And actually, there was a question, Andre. Yeah, I was just asking what you just showed. I was asking whether that had been committed to any of the branches on GitHub. Andre? Sorry,
I think no. I think that Andre made his changes in his local machine. Andre, have you committed your changes?
No, it is not in GitHub or somewhere else yet, because it's still in progress. I plan to improve it, not a bit, but significantly. It is still not very good as a final result. But if it is necessary, as is in its current state. If it is interesting, I can upload it.
It's certainly interesting, but once you're happy with the code, certainly load it, let me know, and it'll be a nice motivation to dive back into cybernetic.
Okay.
Cool. I don't know where Steven is. He might probably be having connection troubles. Did we go through everything for the updates? Through everyone? I think so.
Yeah, I think everyone's spoken. Yeah, we're used to hearing an inspiring speech from Steven at the end here.
Yeah, there's not going to be.
This is anticlimactic.
What a dull end of
Come on,
the
Matteo.
meeting it's going to be. Yeah.
Give it to us.
Come on, Matteo.
Okay, I think unless anybody has anything to add. Ah, there he goes. We were just leaving, Steven.
I know.
Fearless leader.
I've been listening to all this, and my computer is just completely panicked. I can't do anything. It's just completely ground to a halt on my side. So that was very frustrating. But I heard everything everybody said. I just wasn't able to. I wasn't able to communicate. So anyway, thank you everybody for the updates. I think it was a very good meeting. I've been downloading the Docker instance in the background. Maybe that's what froze my system. I'm not sure. But have a look at it as well. I was going to show it, but I think I won't right now. I think it's been a good month. I will see you guys, if nothing else, next month. Don't forget the Journal Club next Friday. Should be a good time. And yeah, I'll be looking out for me to put out some like really weird but stubbed out master OpenWorm script that maybe can be some hooking in points for other things as we go forward here. So, all right, thank you guys, and I will see you as we see you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Soon, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.